In a tale of tangled hearts and a second chance at life, the story unfolds. When Arthur held Olivia in his arms at the wedding venue, he publicly declared, "Olivia and I are the ones truly in love. The person I'm marrying today is Olivia." Everyone turned to look at me in shock, but I neither lashed out nor made a scene. Instead, in front of all the guests, I walked toward him with grace and elegance, stopping right before him. I curtsied politely and said, "Arthur, my feelings for you end here. Congratulations on your wedding, and this time, I won't let my blind love destroy my life and family again." As soon as Arthur's firm words fell, a collective gasp spread through the crowd. Their gazes shifted toward me, unreadable expressions on their faces. In an instant, I became the undeniable focus of the entire wedding. Ever since I met Olivia, I finally understood what love truly is, Arthur continued. She has taught me so much. My heart belongs only to her, and she is the only one I wish to marry. So please let us be together. Our gazes locked, filled with emotion, making me look like some wicked villain trying to tear apart a pair of destined lovers. Encouraged by Arthur's support, Olivia gathered her courage and spoke. "Diana, Arthur doesn't love you. Why must you force something that isn't meant to be? A forced relationship will never bring happiness. Marrying someone who doesn't love you won't make you happy. Arthur and I are truly in love. Please, let us be together." Her voice was full of pleading. I looked at the two of them standing on the stage, tightly embracing each other, and smiled faintly. Since I was 10 years old, I had known that I would marry Arthur to stand by his side. I worked tirelessly, studying every skill imaginable. While other girls played with dolls, I was learning how to appraise fine goods. While others compared pretty dresses, I had already memorized the family histories of every noble household in the city. While my peers worried about scoring 100 on their final exams, I was mastering social etiquette. All of it was for the sole purpose of becoming Arthur's perfect wife, because I knew that the woman standing beside Arthur could never be just a pretty ornament. Perhaps my childhood obsession had twisted my perception. I had convinced myself that marrying Arthur and becoming the matriarch of his family was my only goal. At some point, even I could no longer distinguish whether it was love or mere possession. But in my past life, despite all my efforts to win that title, Arthur turned my devotion into the very weapon that destroyed me. This time, I refused to fall into the Collins family's trap again. Lifting the hem of my custom-made wedding dress, I took deliberate steps toward the stage. The bodyguards followed closely, their expressions tense, as if they were prepared to subdue me at the slightest movement. Yet, I simply stopped 3 meters away from Arthur with a poised and elegant courtesy. "Arthur, my feelings for you end here. Congratulations on your wedding." Arthur visibly froze on stage. He had expected resistance, yet I agreed so readily. The next second, Mr. Collins stormed onto the stage, raising his hand to slap Olivia, but Arthur intercepted him at the last moment. Mr. Collins, unconcerned with appearances, lashed out at Arthur. "You ungrateful disgrace, throwing away a perfect match from a prestigious family just to marry some unknown pauper. You're humiliating the Collins family. What does she even have besides a frail, pitiful act to win your sympathy?" Olivia's face turned crimson with embarrassment, but Arthur held her protectively in his arms, as if she were the most precious treasure. "Diana," he declared, "she is everything I need, and all she has is me. You and I grew up together. If there was ever a spark, it would have happened long ago. I never liked you, so why do you all keep forcing this? A marriage without love will never bring happiness. I want the whole world to know Olivia is the only one I love. I just want to give her the best of everything." His impassioned declaration earned murmured laughter from some of the guests. Marriage among the wealthy was never this simple. Arthur then turned his focus to me. "You don't love me either, do you? A marriage like ours would never be happy." I didn't respond. Instead, I silently removed the engagement ring from my finger, ready to return it to him, only to notice that Olivia was already wearing a dazzling diamond ring on her own hand. I let out a quiet, amused sigh. Taking the hand of the bodyguard beside me, I placed the ring in his palm, returning it to its rightful owner. Mr. Collins grabbed my hand, attempting to persuade me to stay, but my father swiftly intervened, shoving his hand aside. "Since the Collins family has already made their choice, we won't impose any further." With that, he took my hand and led me away in anger. Because of a casual joke from the elders, I had loved Arthur for 18 years. Even when my so-called friends mocked me for chasing after him, I simply laughed it off. No matter what they said, it wouldn't change the fact that I was going to marry into the Collins family. But when I finally won that position, I realized how foolish I had been. I had thrown myself straight into an abyss. Even my own parents had lost faith in that marriage. This time, I wouldn't let myself be trapped again. I had no reason to step into the Collins family's den of wolves. The moment we stepped out of the wedding venue, my father was livid. The entire ride home, he fumed nonstop. That little punk Arthur had the audacity to humiliate my daughter like this. Unbelievable. Tomorrow, I'm calling my secretary to cut off all business ties with the Collins family. If it weren't for my respect for old Mr. Collins, I wouldn't have even considered letting my daughter marry that piece of trash. Do you know how many outstanding men have come asking for Diana's hand, and yet that brat dares to treat her like this? No, I won't let this slide. I need to find someone to teach that ungrateful punk a lesson. My mother sat beside him, trying to calm him down, but it wasn't working. Honestly, if someone handed my father a machine gun right now, I was convinced he'd storm the Collins estate and tear them all apart. The thought made me chuckle. The moment I laughed, my father finally stopped his angry rant, turning to me with a puzzled expression. Diana, are you in shock? I reached out and tightly grasped both of my parents' hands. They weren't cold anymore. For a moment, I felt a wave of emotion, and my eyes welled up with tears. My father assumed I was heartbroken and immediately told the driver to turn around, prepared to march back and confront Arthur. I quickly stopped him. Dad, even if Arthur hadn't put on this whole show today, I would have broken off the engagement with the Collins family myself. My father opened his mouth to ask why, but hesitated, swallowing his curiosity, afraid of upsetting me further. I turned my gaze to the passing scenery outside the car window, then looked back at my parents with unwavering seriousness. At home, you both cherish me like a princess, but in the Collins family, I would have been nothing more than a pawn to strengthen their legacy, a tool to bear children. My parents stared at me in shock, not fully understanding what I meant. In my past life, Arthur had also brought Olivia to ruin my wedding, but I had been so blinded by obsession that I refused to let go. I caused an absolute spectacle, throwing a tantrum in front of all the guests. My wedding dress was torn, wine glasses were shattered, and the beautifully arranged venue was left in ruins. In the end, under pressure from all sides, Arthur grudgingly married me, resenting me every step of the way. But that was the beginning of my nightmare. Arthur never forgave me for taking Olivia's place. He treated me with cold indifference, and to get back at me, he deliberately orchestrated a hostile takeover of my family's company. My mother-in-law blamed me for failing to win over my husband's heart, and her complaints became relentless. You've been married into the Collins family for so long, and you still haven't given us a child, she sneered at me. I had no response. I could only smile bitterly. Arthur's disdain for me spread throughout the entire Collins household, turning every day into a battle for survival. In the end, my family's company was completely swallowed up. My parents, devastated and left with nothing, took their own lives. I was left clinging to whatever scraps of dignity I had, forced to rely on the very people who had destroyed me. But what truly shattered me was when Arthur and Olivia had a child together. I looked at my parents with unwavering determination. That life had been a living hell, an endless cycle of suffering. The Collins family was nothing but a gilded cage, one that stripped me of my identity and happiness. If I, who had been raised as their future daughter-in-law, had suffered so much, then Olivia, who was forcing her way in, would face her own fate. Perhaps with Arthur protecting her, things would be different for her. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. After hearing everything I said, my parents fell into deep thought, their brows furrowed as they processed my words. After a long silence, my father looked at me seriously. My precious girl, what do you want to do next? I'm going to study abroad, I said without hesitation, then leaned into my mother's embrace with a playful pout. After all, the future of our family's legacy is in my hands. I have to make it stronger than ever. The once gloomy atmosphere instantly shifted as my father burst into laughter. Ah, that's my girl. That's my Diana. Without hesitation, my father made arrangements. Very soon, my family had everything set for my departure. On the day I left, I didn't tell anyone. Snow fell heavily from the sky, just like that New Year's Eve years ago. I remembered how Arthur had arrogantly grabbed my hand in front of our families, boldly declaring, "This is my wife," causing the elders to burst into laughter. But in the end, it was nothing more than a farce. I casually scrolled through my phone only to see a news headline, "Cinderella and her prince, a love story destined to be." I chuckled lightly, turned off my phone, picked up my boarding pass, and left. 3 years later, I returned home after completing my studies. The company was officially being handed over to me. To celebrate my return, my social circle arranged a grand welcome party. Over the years, I had developed a taste for fine wine, so my best friend, Chloe, chose an upscale bar for the gathering. However, the moment I arrived, I spotted Arthur sitting in a corner. He saw me too. Our eyes met, and his brows furrowed slightly. Why was he here? I asked. Chloe shrugged. You know how small our circle is. The moment news spread that you were back, it didn't take long for it to reach the Collins family. I nodded. It was true. Our social circle was so tightly knit that even the smallest movement became public knowledge within minutes, especially when my parents were so fond of talking about me. I glanced in Arthur's direction. He looked distant and unapproachable. Olivia didn't come with him? I asked. Chloe leaned in and whispered in my ear. Don't even mention her. She's practically the biggest joke in our entire circle now. Anyone associated with her is bound to suffer. Nobody wants to be anywhere near her. I frowned slightly, but Chloe didn't elaborate further. Instead, she playfully pushed me toward the crowd. Tonight, no one gets to be reserved. As the guest of honor, you have a responsibility to enjoy yourself. At her words, the others eagerly joined in, raising their glasses to toast me. I smiled and accepted each one gracefully. For the past 3 years, I had poured every ounce of my energy into my studies, devouring books as if I had 8 brains working at once. Now that I was finally back, I figured I deserved to let loose a little. But just as I was about to take another sip, Arthur suddenly snatched the glass from my hand. You're not good with alcohol. Don't drink so much. I didn't appreciate his concern. I simply took the glass back. Arthur tried to grab it from me again, but I dodged effortlessly. Smiling, I said, Mr. Collins, please don't break the rules. I really dislike men who make decisions for me. He was visibly taken aback by my response, clearly not expecting it. Social gatherings like these were second nature to me now. I handled them with ease. I didn't need sympathy, nor did I need a prince to protect me. I turned and continued my conversation with the air of a real estate tycoon, raising my glass to toast him. Meanwhile, Arthur followed half a step behind me, staying close, but I didn't spare him another glance. Suddenly, someone in the crowd gasped, "Look at the fireworks." I turned my head and saw a dazzling display lighting up the night sky, red, white, gold colors bursting in a mesmerizing dance. Arthur moved beside me, holding his glass of wine. He leaned in slightly, his voice low in my ear. "Do you like them?" I said nothing. He smiled faintly. "I once promised to give you a grand fireworks display, but you were abroad all these years. I never got the chance." I gazed at the vibrant explosions outside the window. Arthur had said that once, but childhood promises were nothing more than words lost to time. I no longer needed them. Snapping back to reality, I lifted my glass and lightly clinked it against his. Smiling politely, I said, "Thank you for the gift, Mr. Collins." My formal response made him pause. He studied me for a long moment before murmuring, "You've changed." I chuckled softly. "You're mistaken, Mr. Collins. As you said, that was all in the past. People grow, don't they?" With that, I gracefully melted back into the crowd, effortlessly engaging in conversation. This gathering was meant for networking and expanding my market connections. I wasn't about to waste such a golden opportunity. Outside, the fireworks continued for nearly half an hour before finally fading into the night. As the party came to an end, people slowly trickled out of the bar, chatting amongst themselves. But as soon as we stepped into the lobby, I saw someone who had clearly been waiting for a long time, Olivia. The moment she spotted us, she quickly approached with a bright, eager smile. "Hello, everyone." The crowd merely acknowledged her with polite nods, nothing more. But Olivia didn't seem to mind. Olivia turned to Arthur with a gentle smile. "I just stopped by your office to bring you dinner. Your secretary said you had a gathering tonight, and since I happened to be passing by, I thought I'd come pick you up." The moment she finished speaking, someone in the crowd chuckled sarcastically. Looks like Arthur is really lucky. Even his soup has to be personally delivered by Mrs. Collins. We can't help but envy him. Though they said it with admiration, the undertone was filled with mockery. Arthur's expression turned cold as he shot Olivia a sharp look. Didn't I tell you not to wander around unnecessarily? Do you think my words are just background noise? Do you enjoy parading yourself around in public? You're constantly embarrassing me. I was surprised by how ruthlessly he scolded her. Olivia quickly put on her usual pitiful expression. Your stomach isn't in good condition, and you've been drinking. I was worried about you, so I brought you some freshly made soup. Please drink it while it's still warm. In the past, Arthur would have fallen for this act instantly, but now, he only glanced at her indifferently, his patience clearly worn thin. Wasn't this the woman he had fought so hard to marry? It had only been 3 years, and yet. Chloe scoffed beside me, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I gave her a questioning look, and she leaned in to whisper. Arthur and Olivia used to be inseparable. He took her everywhere, as if he wanted to announce to the whole world that she was the love of his life. But do you know what they say about people who are beyond saving? She let out a soft chuckle before continuing. 2 years ago at a charity gala for animal conservation, she showed up wearing real fur. The organizers were so furious that they kicked her out on the spot. Then, during the Collins family's annual company banquet, her impoverished relatives barged in, demanding Arthur give them jobs. His parents were so enraged that they publicly humiliated Olivia, calling her a walking disaster, and kicked both of them out of the family estate. Arthur, who values his reputation more than anything, must have felt like she was slapping him in the face over and over again. No wonder he looks like this now. I listened to Chloe's animated storytelling without any particular reaction. Indeed, Arthur was a man who cared deeply about his image. Everything Olivia had done was a direct insult to his pride. It wasn't surprising that their relationship had soured. Before Chloe could finish, Olivia suddenly stepped around Arthur and walked up to me. Her expression was hostile as she sneered. Miss Jane, I heard you just returned from abroad. What a coincidence to run into you here. I met her gaze steadily. Though she was dressed head to toe in luxury brands, her outfit screamed desperation, as if she was trying to wear her wealth like a badge of honor. I found it amusing, but ultimately unimportant. I gave her a polite smile, intending to walk away without engaging further. But before I could take another step, Olivia suddenly slapped me across the face. You shameless homewrecker. I froze in place. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Chloe immediately stepped in front of me protectively. Arthur stormed forward in an instant and shoved Olivia aside. What the hell is wrong with you? Olivia's innocent facade shattered as she glared at me with fury. If it weren't for her, would we have ended up like this? Everyone says she's your first love, the woman you've never been able to forget. She left the country, so why did she have to come back? Is she trying to ruin our marriage? Why should I be polite to a homewrecker? Can't find a man of your own, so you have to seduce someone else's? And don't think I don't know, those fireworks tonight were for her, weren't they? Before she could say another word, Arthur slapped her across the face. You? Olivia clutched her cheek in shock. You actually hit me over her? Do you even remember who your wife is? Arthur raised his hand again, clearly furious, but I caught his wrist before he could strike her a second time. He looked at me in confusion, but I ignored him, my gaze fixed on Olivia, who had collapsed onto the floor in hysterics. If I remember correctly, you were the one who dragged my groom away from my wedding 3 years ago, I said, my voice calm but cutting. Don't assume that everyone is like you, eager to steal what belongs to others. Then, I turned slightly, casting Arthur a cold glance before looking back at Olivia. Besides, I have no interest in second-hand goods. My tone was crisp and deliberate. But if you ever slander me again, I'll make sure you can't stay in this city. With that, I gave Chloe a subtle signal. Almost instantly, someone stepped forward and restrained Olivia. I walked up and slapped her twice, the crisp sound echoing through the lobby. Olivia had no chance to retaliate. She could only glare at me with hatred, her face flushed with humiliation. I adjusted my sleeve and turned to Arthur. Control your dog. Next time, it won't just be 2 slaps. The next morning, gossip about the incident exploded across every major social media platform. The scandal had officially made the headlines the very first day I returned home. I became the center of public attention, but unfortunately, it was all for the wrong reasons. The courageous Mrs. Collins slaps the mistress to defend her marriage. Cinderella's fairy tale crumbles. The Collins heir falls for another woman. Was Cinderella's unhappiness after marriage caused by the mistress? I didn't need to think twice to know exactly who was behind these headlines. My father was so furious that he smashed an antique vase I had bought for his office. "This is outrageous," he roared. Just as I was about to calm him down, my phone rang. It was Arthur. "Diana, my mother would like to invite you to our home for dinner. She wants to personally apologize to you." I was silent for a few seconds before finally agreeing. The Collins family was still one of the most powerful in this city. I couldn't avoid them forever, especially in business where our paths would inevitably cross. Soon after, under the pressure my father exerted, the defamatory news about me vanished from the internet as if it had never existed. I knew that apart from my family's influence, the Collins family had also played a role in making it disappear. That evening, as I was heading to the underground parking lot after work, I heard a car honk. Turning around, I was surprised to see Arthur waiting in his car. I was taken aback. In the past, no matter how much I pouted or acted coy, he never once came to pick me up. He would always scoff and say, "You're not disabled. You can drive yourself. Why should I pick you up?" Yet now, after we had gone our separate ways, he was suddenly making an effort. I didn't overthink it. Since he was offering a ride, I might as well take advantage of the convenience. However, the moment I stepped into the Collins home, I realized something was off. The room was packed with people. It was a full-fledged family gathering. As an outsider, it felt completely inappropriate for me to be here. Just as I was about to find an excuse to leave, Arthur's mother warmly took my hand. "Diana, you're here. You've become even more beautiful," she beamed. "I heard you've officially taken over the James family business. What a blessing for your parents to have such a capable daughter." She then led me to sit among the elders. I wonder which lucky man will be fortunate enough to marry such an outstanding young woman. The relatives joined in, showering me with praise. Meanwhile, Olivia's situation was the complete opposite of mine. Arthur's mother beckoned, and Olivia quickly trotted over, despite the clear reluctance on her face. With a forced smile, she respectfully poured me a cup of tea, her demeanor eerily similar to that of a housemaid. No matter how much she humbled herself, it still didn't earn her Arthur's mother's approval. The scene was strangely familiar. In my past life, after being married to Arthur for years without bearing a child, his mother had grown increasingly impatient with me. Eventually, her attitude turned cold and harsh. I, too, had been forced to serve tea and endure countless humiliations. This was simply how the Collins family operated. Anyone who was deemed useless would be relegated to nothing more than a servant. Arthur's mother gently squeezed my hand. "Diana, you've been wronged by all that nonsense in the media." Then her voice turned sharp as she snapped at Olivia. "Look at what you've done. Apologize to Diana right now." Her tone was full of disdain. "I never expected you to bring honor to the Collins name, but embarrassing us in public like this? Do you enjoy humiliating our family? You are completely disgraceful." Under Arthur's mother's heavy pressure, Olivia hesitated for a moment before finally mumbling, "Miss Jane, I was wrong. I apologize." I simply gave a slight nod in acknowledgement. Not a single person in the room spoke up for Olivia, not even Arthur. He just sat there silently, peeling an orange, his expression unreadable. But his mother wasn't done venting her anger. She suddenly turned her frustration toward him. "Look at the woman you married. Is this what you wanted? Are you trying to drive me to my grave?" Arthur didn't even lift his gaze. Instead, he simply placed the peeled orange neatly onto a plate and pushed it toward me. I glanced at the plate in front of me and fell into momentary silence. I had always liked oranges, but I had a habit of meticulously peeling off every bit of the white pith before eating them. Arthur used to scoff at this, saying I was too delicate and spoiled. He had never once peeled an orange for me. Instead, he used to mock me, calling me a pampered princess who didn't understand real hardship. But now, right in front of me was a perfectly peeled orange, free of any white pith. Arthur's mother, seemingly unaware of the shift in atmosphere, continued to look at me with enthusiasm. "Diana, you're still single, right?" I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say a word, she abruptly turned to Arthur with a stern expression. "If you don't like her, then finalize the divorce as soon as possible." Olivia visibly panicked. Her hands trembled, and the teapot she had been holding slipped from her grasp, shattering on the floor. But she didn't care about the broken porcelain. Her wide, terrified eyes were locked onto Arthur's mother. I don't agree. Arthur's objection barely registered with his mother. She simply rolled her eyes. Useless. Do you really think you can cling to the Collins family forever? Then she turned to Arthur expectantly. He cast a brief, indifferent glance at Olivia before giving a slight nod. Olivia instantly lost all strength, collapsing to the floor as she watched everything unfold in disbelief. She sobbed uncontrollably, but no one paid her any attention. All eyes were on me instead. As long as I agreed, the position of Mrs. Collins would once again be mine. But I had long stopped caring about that so-called prestigious title, which in reality was nothing more than a gilded cage. I firmly pulled my hand away from Mrs. Collins's grasp and gave her a polite smile. I'm sorry, Mrs. Collins, but I'm already engaged. The Collins family members all looked at me in shock. Arthur's dark eyes fixated on me as if he were searching for a flaw in my words, trying to determine if I was lying. Eventually, his mother spoke up. Why haven't we heard your parents mention this before? He's not from this city, I replied calmly. We didn't make a big announcement. At this, the curious gazes slowly withdrew, their faces filled with disappointment. Now that everything was cleared up, I had no reason to linger in the Collins home. I bid farewell to the elders politely, and this time, no one tried to stop me. However, just as I reached the front door, Arthur chased after me. You don't need to make up a fake fiancé just to reject me, he said. It won't do your reputation any good. Reputation? Hearing that word from Arthur's mouth was almost laughable. After all, wasn't it him who completely ruined mine 3 years ago? I'll take you home, he added. This place is quite far from the city. I don't feel comfortable letting you go alone. Before I could respond, a hand suddenly reached out and blocked his path. Sorry, a familiar voice drawled lazily. Miss Jane will be leaving with me. You don't need to trouble yourself with that. He effortlessly smacked away Arthur's extended hand. I turned in surprise and saw Victor standing there. Aren't you supposed to arrive tomorrow? Why are you here today? I asked, pleasantly surprised. Victor smirked. If I didn't come now, someone might just steal my fiancé. How could I let that happen? Arthur's expression darkened as he watched our interaction. Diana, you don't need to bring in some random boy toy just to turn me down. Since when did your taste become this bad? I glanced at Victor, his perfect face, his impeccable physique. If it hadn't been for his looks, I probably wouldn't have let him completely consume me back then. You call this bad taste? I raised an eyebrow. Arthur, you're as blind as ever. Hearing this, Victor looked like he was about to lose his temper. I quickly grabbed his wrist, feeling slightly nervous. If this young prince got angry, the entire city would feel the impact. Once I calmed him down, I turned to Arthur with an icy gaze. Regardless of your relationship with Olivia, she is still your wife for now. She was humiliated in front of everyone, and yet you just stood there doing nothing. I scoffed. Arthur, I despise men like you. Arthur looked like he wanted to explain, but before he could say a word, Victor shot him a warning glance. She's my fiancée, Victor said coolly. Know your place. With that, he hummed a light-hearted tune and led me away from the Collins estate. I had thought that Victor's presence would be enough to push Arthur away, but unexpectedly, not long after, he personally sent over a major business project to the James Corporation with only one condition. I had to be personally involved. My secretary hesitated as she placed the documents in front of me. Miss James, should we take on this project? Before I could even respond, Victor, who had made himself comfortable in my office, casually reached out and grabbed the file, flipping through it with mild interest. A few moments later, he shut the folder and flashed me a knowing smile. Diana, do you want to work with him? My secretary, sensing the tension, nervously glanced between the two of us, but I didn't even lift my head. Instead, I focused on reviewing the day's paperwork. Is there money to be made? I asked plainly. Victor chuckled. If there's profit, of course we'll do it. I'm not stupid, I continued. Besides, I still have ambitions to expand the James Corporation. The next second, Victor suddenly moved behind me, wrapping his arms tightly around my waist. He leaned down, his lips grazing my ear as he murmured, not only will it make money, it'll make a lot of money. Looks like Arthur has some ulterior motives here. As Victor spoke, he leaned in, his breath tickling my ear, making it itch slightly. I rolled my eyes in exasperation. You already know everything that happened between me and Arthur. Why are you acting jealous now? In an instant, Victor transformed, throwing his arms around me and dramatically whining. I'm just afraid that my fiancé will be snatched away by a certain someone. I sighed and resorted to my usual tactic. I pinched his waist hard. Only then did he finally behave. Teaming up with the Collins Corporation was nothing but beneficial. Despite Victor's resentful gaze, the deal was finalized. The only downside, I paid the price by being utterly exhausted at his hands later that night. Honestly, I was beginning to suspect that Victor had been a dog in his past life, considering how much he liked to bite. Soon, the project officially commenced. Since we needed to inspect the site in person, Arthur and I had to make the trip together. I spent the entire journey reviewing documents, focused on my work, but Arthur kept glancing at me from time to time, clearly in a good mood. Diana, do you remember the last time we came to Ningtown? He suddenly asked. I looked up at him, puzzled. He smiled slightly. Back in high school, we came here for a camping trip. You twisted your ankle while hiking and stubbornly insisted that I carry you back. His voice carried a hint of nostalgia. By the time we reached the hospital, I was so exhausted I could barely breathe. I turned to look out the window at the familiar scenery. The memory came back to me. Back then, when I sprained my ankle, Arthur had been full of complaints. How can you be so clumsy? Who even manages to twist their ankle just from hiking? Later, when the teacher scolded him for being insensitive, he begrudgingly carried me to the nearest hospital. So this was what he was reminiscing about. Seeing that I remained silent, Arthur teased, was that when you started liking me? I met his gaze, my expression devoid of any warmth. When I liked you, you didn't care. Now that I don't want you anymore, you cling to me like an annoying piece of gum, saying nauseating things. Without another word, I returned my attention to the documents, not sparing him another glance. Oh, did that really happen? I said indifferently. I don't remember. Arthur's expression froze. For the rest of the day, he didn't speak to me again. Perfect. That evening, just as I was about to return to my room, he cornered me at the door. If you don't want to go out for dinner, let's eat in the room, he suggested, stepping inside uninvited. But the moment he entered, his expression darkened. Victor was already lounging comfortably inside my room, surrounded by a full spread of steaming hot dishes. Oh, Arthur, what a coincidence, running into you again, Victor smirked, propping his chin on his hand. You really enjoy digging into other people's walls, don't you? Or do you think things always taste better when they belong to someone else? Arthur's face turned red with anger, but in the end, he had no choice but to leave in frustration. For the next few days, Victor stuck close to me, never giving Arthur a chance to approach. However, just before our trip ended, something urgent came up in the Victor family, forcing him to leave early. Before departing, he made sure to remind me, "Sweetheart, don't forget to miss me, and don't let anyone steal you away while I'm gone." He even deliberately glanced at Arthur before finally leaving. It was only after Victor was gone that Arthur seized the opportunity to get close to me again. "What exactly do you see in that guy?" he asked, his tone sharp. "He's nothing but a freeloading pretty boy, living off of you. He doesn't even have a real job. How could someone like him be worthy of you?" Unlike his obvious agitation, I remained completely calm. "My personal affairs don't seem to be any of your business, Mr. Collins." His words were eerily familiar, ones I had once said to him back then. I had tried to reason with him about compatibility. Arthur, family background, people from different worlds will always struggle. But he had simply laughed. "Diana, you and Olivia are nothing alike. You grew up with wealth and privilege, getting everything handed to you, even marriage. I know you look down on ordinary people like us, but Olivia is different. She never had a choice about where she came from. She may not have money, but she has perseverance, determination, and a kind of beauty you will never understand." And now, was it because Olivia's so-called perseverance and struggle no longer fascinated him that he was suddenly able to see the differences? So now the same qualities that once attracted you have become a flaw? I asked coldly. Arthur looked anxious to explain himself. "I've learned from my mistakes. I now understand how hard it is when a relationship is unequal. I don't want you to go through what I did. A marriage between two people of similar standing is always the best choice for someone in our position." His voice dropped slightly. "Diana, let him go. It'll be better for both of you." I merely let out a soft chuckle, not bothering to respond to Arthur. Yes, social status and compatibility were important, but who was he to say that Victor and I weren't a perfect match? To avoid further disturbances from Arthur, I cut the inspection trip short and returned to the city earlier than planned. However, I hadn't expected to be greeted by the explosive news of Arthur's impending divorce the moment I set foot in town. Just as I arrived at my office, Olivia barged in right after me, demanding to see me. With no other choice, I had my secretary bring her to my office. The moment she saw me, she launched into accusations. "You left the country. Why did you have to come back?" she screeched. "You willingly gave up Arthur to me back then, so why are you trying to take him away from me now? What's your real intention? We were doing fine together, and it's all because of you that he started looking down on me. I've sacrificed so much for him. Why does he still think about you?" I casually flipped through the documents my secretary had placed on my desk, not even bothering to lift my head. "Didn't you play the classic childhood sweetheart loses to a fated romance act back then?" I asked coolly. Olivia stiffened, stumbling over her words. I was just fighting for my love." "Love?" I raised an eyebrow. Who knows what that really is? If Arthur had been an ordinary man with no wealth or power, would Olivia still have loved him? Who could say? But that was none of my business. I finally looked up and met Olivia's gaze. Perhaps because she reminded me too much of my past self, I couldn't help but say, "I never placed my worth or my future in the hands of a man. I never built my entire life around one person. There are so many things in this world beyond men." But Olivia didn't seem to understand. "You and I are different," she muttered. "You were born with everything. Marrying Arthur was my only chance to escape the suffering of my past. He was the best option I had." Then, suddenly, she dropped to her knees, clasping her hands together in a desperate plea. "Please, give Arthur back to me. Don't take him away from me." Before I could respond, Arthur finally arrived. Without hesitation, he yanked Olivia up from the ground. "Enough. Have you humiliated yourself enough yet?" His voice was sharp with frustration. He cast me a brief, apologetic glance before dragging Olivia away. Later, I heard that Olivia had exhausted every possible method to win Arthur back, but he remained firm in his decision to divorce. In the end, she gave up entirely and instead demanded an outrageous alimony settlement. For months, their divorce scandal was the hottest gossip in our social circles, but in the end, Arthur only gave her $1 million before having her completely thrown out of the Collins family. As for me, I poured all my energy into expanding the James Corporation and had no time to concern myself with Arthur's mess. It was ironic. The title I had fought for with everything I had in my past life had ultimately been used as a weapon to destroy my family. On my birthday, Victor flew back from the capital just to celebrate with me. After I finished making my wish, I opened my eyes to find Victor kneeling on one knee, looking up at me with a deep, unwavering gaze. "Diana, will you marry me?" I glanced at my parents, who were practically beaming with joy, then looked back at Victor. Smiling, I extended my left hand. Just as he slipped the ring onto my finger, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was stunned to see Arthur standing there, holding a bouquet of fresh flowers. He smiled at me. "Diana, happy birthday. From now on, I want to be there for every one of your birthdays. I'm divorced now. Can we start over?" Before he could finish, a strong arm wrapped around my shoulders, pulling me into a firm embrace. "Sorry, you're too late," Victor said lazily. "This flower has already been picked." As he spoke, he deliberately lifted my hand, displaying the dazzling 10-carat diamond ring on my finger. Arthur's expression darkened instantly. "You're marrying this freeloader just to get back at me?" His voice was thick with disbelief. "I know I was wrong, Diana, but..." Before he could finish, Victor casually lifted his foot and kicked him down the porch steps. Arthur landed awkwardly, his fall less than graceful. "Did you just call the young master of the Victor family a freeloader?" Victor scoffed. "Are you an idiot?" It was only then that Arthur finally realized who Victor really was. His face paled, and without another word, he turned and left in disgrace. Later, I heard that Arthur was utterly broken after the divorce, aimlessly wasting his days away. The Collins family, tired of his incompetence, chose to support his cousin in taking over the company instead. I merely listened to the gossip with indifference. The Collins family had always prioritized profits over people. A month later, Victor and I were married in a grand ceremony that gathered the most prominent families from both cities. Our wedding of the century stayed at the top of social media trends for half a month before it finally faded away.